dedicated to empowering you with information
to make positive choices
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View. Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunetz, and today we're going to be talking about the Performing Arts Center in the City of Nashua and the upcoming referendum that will be on the November 7th ballot. My guest today is James Vayo. James is the specialist for the downtown for the City of Nashua. And welcome, James. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak on behalf of the Performing Arts Center and other items for downtown.
Yes, it's very important that we're utilizing this opportunity to give people facts so that they go into the polls with an understanding of the best choice that they need to make based upon important information that they need to have. So why don't we start with the referendum? What is it that the referendum will say, and what is the choice that people will be making?
Basically, to sum it down very simply, the referendum is the opportunity for the people of Nashua to express their sentiment about whether or not they believe a performing arts center is something that is favorable or unfavorable to the City of Nashua.
Now, it's my understanding that this referendum is non-binding. What does that mean?
It really means that at the end, after the vote is taken and percentages are tallied for or against this referendum, or this ballot measure, that the aldermen would then again have an opportunity to review action relative to bonding for a performing arts center.
Now, it's my understanding that this resolution is for a specific amount of money for a specific piece of property within the City of Nashua. Can you explain that, please?
Sure, that's correct. So the bond measure would be for $15.5 million, which would cover the capital expenses required to implement construction and get to a place of operations for the address of 201 Main Street, which is the former Alex Shoe store on Main Street in downtown Nashua.
And that initial money would allow the city to do what?
It would allow them to make the physical improvements to the building that would be required for a performing arts center to be fully functional and operational and open its doors to the public for shows.
And so this referendum is specifically for an agreement for not only a performing arts center, but the acquisition of that property in order to have it at that site.
Yes, that's correct. The land purchase is a huge component of this, land value, and there was an extensive site selection process that took place, and the cost of the land was a major component and criteria for selecting a site.
And so why is this site the best site for the City of Nashua?
There are multiple criteria. As I mentioned before, the cost of the land is a significant one. There were many other sites we looked at along the way. I should just back up a little and say that when I came into the city about 18 months ago, I had the opportunity to connect and start working with Duncan Webb and Bernard Cott, which are the architect and the performing arts feasibility analysis consultant that the city hired to review this project and come up with a project that would work and a site that would work. And so, spinning back forward a little bit, there were several sites. Pierce Nav had a site, Water Street, Spring Street parking lot. These are all downtown sites that are walkable to Main Street, have some level of high visibility, have access to municipal parking areas. And in the end, after a series of review cycles, it was determined that 201 had the most suitable site. It had a very prominent visible frontage on Main Street. It had access to the Elm Street garage, which has a very low occupancy after 5 p.m. That garage is a very large capacity to hold cars. And so, in addition, it's also less than 200 feet from the front door of the Performing Arts Center to the city garage. And so, with all those factors and others taken into consideration, purchase price, cost to rehab the building, 201 Main Street, Alex Shoes, was identified as the most feasible location.
And will this money come out of the city budget? operating budgets, or will it be bonded?
So there'll be no impact to the base taxes for the City of Nashua. The city has a certain level of bonding capacity, and as some bonds are rolling off for the city, this $15.5 million measure could roll onto the bond capacity as old bonds are reaching the end of their life.
And you were saying it will have no impact to the bottom line taxes of individuals living in the City of Nashua?
No changes to the tax.
No changes whatsoever. The process of this happening, how long does it take from the time of the vote for something like this to come into being?
There is a rigorous process that will need to be implemented as part of vetting and developing an architectural plan, receiving site plan approvals, developing an operations plan, hiring a consultant that would be basically the creative manager for operating the building. And that stuff could take anywhere between 24 to 36 months.
And is that all part of the monies that are being allocated within, that is suggested here in the referendum of the $15.5 million?
Yes, so the $15.5 million could be utilized primarily for the construction and architectural engineering design of the building, the physical improvements. But along the way, there will be a need to develop some organizational structures around the operations. That stuff's not anticipated to have any real significant costs until equipment and hiring starts coming into place.
What about the $4 million that needs to be raised in order to assist with this project from the private funds? Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention it during the discussion earlier about the ballot. Part of the safety mechanism on this ballot measure would be that the private market or the private citizens and organizations would need to raise $4 million in an endowment fund.
And what will that endowment fund be used for?
The endowment allows the city, the Performing Arts Center, to have an operational subsidy in lieu of the City of Nashua providing an operational subsidy.
Which means?
Most, if not most, performing arts venues do not operate at a profit. They operate at some subsidized rate. And because communities realize the significance and the value of having these things in their downtowns or in their civic centers. And so what happens is the Palace Theatre in Manchester or the Capitol Center for Arts, any of these places rely on volunteers to be involved and for there to be sustained fundraising and fundraising for operations, fundraising campaigns annually for their operations.
So that this money then would not be taken out of the city coffers per se, related to its operational and its ability to pay for the things to make the city vibrant. This is separate funding.
That's correct. And this construct of having an endowment to pay for operations was something that was developed over the time of the feasibility as a result of people asking this very question. Well, you know, is the city going to be liable? And people said, well, we don't want the city to be liable for the operations. And so the resolution to that was, let's build this endowment as a constructed model to basically have a firewall between the city being responsible.
And what happens if the endowment is not able to be raised?
The bond does not get executed.
So nothing will happen until that time that $4 million is raised, then the bond would go into effect.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, that's about building a partnership between the private and public entities.
Very good. And that's done in other cities, you were saying.
Yeah, I can't speak to the endowment model for Concord, but what I do know is that these people do have to do sustained outreach for capital.
And from a management perspective, will the City of Nashua be the one to oversee the Performing Arts Center, or will they have a private operational person managing it and assisting it to be vibrant?
This is a really important point. The municipality will own the building and the operations in its entirety, but on an annual or biannual basis, they will be contracting with a third party that is knowledgeable in booking talent, in booking event space to operate the building. And essentially, this third party will have their own employees operating the building, holding the keys, so to speak.
And from a management perspective of the physical space, the building itself, who is responsible for taking care of that? The City of Nashua?
The City of Nashua will own the building outright. The building will have its own operating expense budget line and its own operating expense line items, basically.
From a facility point of view also. So the city won't be the one that's responsible for the maintenance of that building? It would be a separate entity that would take care of that?
Yeah, essentially the operator of the building, this third-party operator, would take into account as part of their annual operations upkeep and maintenance, day-to-day stuff, 10-year investment cycles, things like that.
What are the pros and cons about having a performing arts center downtown? You said a feasible study was done. Why is it that downtown Nashua would be the best place for a performing arts center, and what will it do for the city of Nashua and surrounding areas?
This is really essential and part of what I'm constantly looking at as the downtown specialist for the city of Nashua is how to improve walkability. Walkability plays into so many aspects of our economic growth and our economic wealth and health for the city of Nashua. And the same is true relative to a performing arts center. If we don't have a performing venue that is walkable to Main Street, we won't see the knock-on effects of people spending money in addition to, say, seeing a show or attending a business outing. Because they will have gotten out of the car once, they'll have gone to their event, and maybe they decide to go get dinner after a show or before a rock concert. And when they do that, they'll be supporting local businesses that are located on our Main Street.
And what are the benefits for the whole entire city of Nashua to have a performing arts center?
Yeah, what the Performing Arts Center is really a significant opportunity for is to reboot our downtown as a highly productive base of taxes for our city and a source, a center for economic and commerce activity in our city. Over the decades, we've seen a reduction in the amount of retail activity that's happened on our Main Street as we have more changes in consumer preferences and shifts in how people purchase their goods. And so what happens is downtowns across the state and across the region are having to learn how to reinvent themselves by adding new vitality and new functions to their downtown. Portsmouth has the 3S Art Space and the Music Hall. Keene has the Colonial Theater. There are lots of communities we can look to and say, all right, that's how they rebooted their downtown. And now it's an opportunity for Nashua to look at how we can reboot our downtown, whether it's a performing arts center or other measures.
So as far as who we will attract to the city of Nashua, are you assuming that who will attend the performances? Is it just the citizens of Nashua, or are you looking to draw other populations to come and explore the city of Nashua to help boost its revenues as well as its viability?
Yeah, so Web Management, the consultant that was hired to conduct the feasibility study, completed an exhaustive study which is available on the economic development webpage of the city of Nashua.
Which is what, please?
It's www.nashuanh.gov, and there's a search bar at the top, and you can type in Performing Arts Center Feasibility, and you will get the webpage.
And please summarize what was in that study.
Essentially, the study calls out that there is a demand for performing arts type functions, whether it's booking business or wedding events, or booking music events or plays, both regionally and locally. And in more detail, the feasibility analysis identifies that there's a very specific size venue that makes sense. Some larger venues already exist, some smaller venues already exist, and the market is somewhat saturated for those uses. But this 500 to 750 person venue is a sweet spot within the performing realm, and the Nashua can really capitalize on that.
Now, within the city of Nashua, there are other needs that are up on the table related to even Elm Street Middle School or other types of bonding situations. How does this particular item differ from that? Do people have to make a choice, one or the other? Is there going to be a significant outcome if the city doesn't do this? Please explain for our audience why this is important and how the city goes about making its choices related to its funding and what it bonds.
Yeah, so the Performing Arts Center, the $15.5 million bond, is the only one that's in front of us right now for consideration. I believe that there are other priorities that the city is considering, and I really would defer to the aldermen in their review of the budget and review of priorities, and their consulting with residents and their representatives as to what the priorities really need to be. So it's really voter and aldermen really need to drive the discussion on what the priorities for investment need to be in the community.
So will the choice of going forward with this particular referendum, will it in any way impact negatively to the city? What does it bring to the city if people choose to vote for it? And what happens if people choose to vote against it?
Well, to put it simply, the Performing Arts Center is an opportunity to make an investment in our downtown where the downtown has really lacked investment for many, many years. And recently, some new investments have been made. The sidewalks have been redone. There's some traffic calming measures, and mid-block crosswalks have been installed. And those are great steps towards reinventing our downtown and making it the most vibrant place it can be. If this ballot measure doesn't move forward, if the city chooses not to bond to move forward with this Performing Arts Center,
What impact will it have on the city?
it will be a missed opportunity for creating a new source of economic activity downtown. That said, the Economic Development Division, our office, would continue to look for ways to revitalize our downtown and continue to seek opportunities to invest in new economic activity in downtown.
So if it was voted down, it wouldn't cause a detrimental reaction in the city of Nashua? Is that what you're saying, that other opportunities would exist? Or would the not taking advantage of this time to vote for this could have a significant impact in the future development and growth and viability of the city of Nashua?
Well, there was a lot of interest in Alex Shoes, I think primarily because it was a major retail anchor in our downtown. And now that major retail anchor is gone, there's a lot of concern that the smaller retail outfits won't have the regional draw that Alex was. That being said, I think even though that maybe this opportunity doesn't happen today, I think there will be a viable function and use for any real estate that sits unused in our downtown over time.
And from the Elm Street perspective of the stage there and what is offered there for the symphony utilizing it, how does that impact the Performing Arts Center?
Yeah, the Keefe Auditorium, which you're referencing at the Elm Street Middle School, is a fantastic venue. I don't know if you've been to it yourself, but it's quite a pleasure to be in. It's really useful for the function that it has, which is to host larger events, whether it be the symphony or school plays or some of the larger premier acts that are put on by our local community theater outfits. But it will never be able to function as a full-blown performing flex space. It's got a ramped floor. It doesn't have the mezzanine or back of house that would be required for modern facilities. And it just wouldn't be the kind of space that would be rentable on a commercial scale, which is really what is being considered for Alex Shoes.
Talk about that further. You mentioned the words flex space. What is the vision for that space?
Yeah, so basically the concept that was developed by Bernard Cott, Scott Aquilino is the point person for Bernard Cott, was a flat floor facility that had an open air, open structure above with performing and staging theatrical equipment mounted to the structure. But what would happen is on a given day, you could have tables and chairs in a banquet style setup, or you could have what's called cabaret, where there's high tops in the back and row seating in the front, or you can have flat floor chairs, folded movable chairs laid out in an array on the floor, or you can have a tiered seating system pulled out from the wall. And so you would have a tremendous amount of flexibility in how the space can be used. One day you could have a classic car show in there. The next you could have an art show where people are able to walk through it. The next day you could set up a stage and have a rock band with an open floor, or you could set it up to have a show similar to what goes on at the Court Street Theater, which is fixed seating on a tiered level for a play.
So it offers a multitude of usages for it that also brings in additional income to help it thrive.
Yeah, basically the recommendation from Duncan Webb is that by doing this, building in this flexibility, you can ensure that you are marketing and occupying the space on as many days as possible throughout the year so that the facility can sustain itself.
And why would the city choose to spend the money in this way?
Oh, well, I think it really comes back down to making solid investments in our downtown and making solid investments in quality of life in our city, as well as putting the best foot forward for our city. And so this is a real opportunity to say, we have exciting things to do in our city. Come visit our downtown. Who knows, you might even want to live here.
Which I'm sure you want to attract youth into the area, future businesses into the area. And from a business point of view, businesses and young people who have children, they're looking for a variety of venues. Is a performing arts center one of the things that people look for in a community?
Well, I brought up walkability before, and one thing I would tell people to check out is Walk Score. It's kind of a branded metric for how walkable your address is.
And what do you mean by Walk Score? How would they go about doing that?
A score of a 0 would mean that basically life is unsustainable, and if you walked out your front door, you would have access to nothing without getting into a car. Car-dependent life.
What is our Walk Score now in Nashua?
It varies from place to place, but in downtown at the new Franklin Lofts, Loft 34 being developed by Brady Sullivan, the Walk Score is 97, which is considered a walker's paradise. Well, guess what? There's a linear relationship between Walk Score and value of real estate and the demand for that space by millennials and boomers. And so we know having a high Walk Score makes our downtown a desirable place to live, and having things to do at night contributes to that Walk Score. Having things to do at night are the things that draw people to live in downtowns.
So having a performing arts center located right there on Main Street, what will that do to the Walk Score?
I don't know how they build their algorithm for their metric, but I can't imagine that it's going to hurt it. It's only going to make downtown that much more enjoyable.
So from your vision, from your perspective, having a performing arts center in downtown will do what for this city? Why is it important to utilize this time as an opportunity to bring this forth?
Because a lot of work. 24 months worth of work went into this, and it's now an opportunity for the public to weigh in and give their opinion and determine whether or not they think this is the right trajectory for our city.
And the referendum is, you have on the first page is the ballot related to who you're voting for. From anywhere from Alderman at Large, from the Fire Commission, Public Works, the moderator. And the back of the ballot is a referendum. And in the referendum, there are actually two things that are coming up, from my understanding. One has to do with the Keno games, correct? And the other has to do with this. So if you would be kind enough to summarize, what is it that people will be voting for? Explain what's on this ballot.
This non-binding measure is a vote to express your sentiment about whether or not you think a performing arts center is of a priority for our downtown or for our city, actually, I should say, and whether or not you are in favor of that investment.
And that investment that it is in particular saying is
$5 million,
And
although the bonding is really contingent on the other $4 million of endowment being raised privately.
And that $15.5 million is for what? Does that come out of the city coffers per se, or is that something that will be bonded separate from?
It does not impact taxes. It is pulled from the capacity for bonding that the city already has.
And that capacity for bonding, the city is what rating?
Oh, geez, I can't tell you that one. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but we can get that information for you.
And for further information, people can go to where in the city? Online? What?
Yep, we can visit Nashua, New Hampshire, or nashuanh.gov. And for the ballots, if you want to see what the ballot looks like, they're all available. Just type elections in the search bar, and you can see what the ballot in your ward looks like.
And from the feasibility study, when they go into that website, where would they find it so that they understand the details related to this project?
All of the work that has been done for the feasibility study is currently available by searching for Performing Arts Center Feasibility on the city webpage, and it all shows up as a series of links with a timeline and a description of the work that's been completed.
And please let us know that website again.
NashuaNH.gov.
And again, one more time.
NashuaNH.gov.
I really appreciate your time and your information. It is our hope that this information will help people make a positive choice that will help them related to the City of Nashua. I thank you very much for all that you do. Until next time.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.